I use exercise as such a large component in my therapy because I think it's a great unifier. It drives mental health symptoms down. It's an antidote for a lot of things. It's a vehicle to self-determination. And so like my ethos in my professional life really matched up with Yoga and Sport for Refugees ethos in their nonprofit and what they do for refugees. And I was like, how cool would it be if I could link this crazy event and really try to fundraise for them?
Welcome to the Low Tide Boys, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
I'm Chris, and this is episode 248 of the show. Thanks for listening on wherever you listen to podcasts or watching us on YouTube. Make sure to leave a like and review, subscribe,
smash the
subscribe
bell
button.
And there's a bell too.
Smash the bell. Yeah, so you get all the notifications. Yeah, well, anyway, we have a really special show for everyone this week. Fresh off completing a feat of endurance for the ages, Nargus Harunzadeh, half of Team Dark Wave, is back on the show to talk about her Manhattan Island 100-kilometer solo swim run. We're talking 50 kilometers of swimming around the island of Manhattan, followed by 50 Ks of running around the perimeter of Manhattan. If that wasn't enough, she completed this feat a week after winning the Otillo Orcas Island solo long course, and 2 weeks after DNFing from Otillo, the Swim World Championship, where she had like a spinal injury. So she hurt her back and she still did all this stuff. Anyway, you have questions. We have questions. Nargis has the answers, but oh my goodness.
What an episode. What an adventure. FTK as well. We haven't got official word back if it's been, is ratified the word to use for this, if it's been
authorized,
stamped,
ratified
into the books, but this is the first sort of attempted Manhattan swim run FTK. So just an amazing
for you tragically unhip. That's fastest known time.
Yes, thank you. Fastest known time. And so no one has been brave enough, we'll say, to attempt such a feat.
I mean,
besides Nargis.
I wonder if no one else just had the idea. I mean, it's a pretty crazy idea. She did awesome. We'll have that conversation for you in a second. Really quickly, we want to share a little bit of some bummer news. If you're watching in the U.S. or you follow U.S. news, there's a huge hurricane that hit the southeast of this country. North Carolina in particular and Georgia were really impacted. As such, fortunately, Swimrun NC had to be postponed to a date to be determined. They're thinking maybe in April of next year.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for Herbert and the crew. Feel really bad for myself. Just going to put that out there.
Yeah.
Feel like, I don't want to say the C word, but I'm feeling a little cursed these days. But it's not about me. It's not about me. I think it's really important that if you're able to help, there's a lot of ways you can donate. Yeah. So look out for those links. You don't need to get that stuff from us. You can get that from good sources, reputable sources. But yeah, so it looks like the last race of the year on the North American calendar is going to be Otillo Austin. So we're stoked for that. Usually they don't have heavy rainfall in November, but who knows?
Who knows? The Colorado River could probably use some water there.
That's true.
But maybe not too much. But anyway, major bummer for Swimrun NC being postponed or moved out a few months. It sounds like the permitting agency just has way too much to deal with now, and putting on a swim run or granting access to the parks for a swim run is the least of their concerns, and rightfully so. Definitely some devastation down there.
Yeah.
And NC, Georgia area.
Yeah. In happier news, a race that we covered on the show earlier this year, Swimrun Trollonez, took place in Brittany and France.
Yes.
Did you check out? How was your FOMO on that? Because my FOMO was sky high.
Yes.
Hugo got back together with Matthew.
The French powerhouse.
The original French powerhouse team got back together. They won. Sabina and Alexis won the mixed category. Looked awesome. I mean, this race is. I mean, even Hugo posted something afterwards. It was like, if this race isn't on your list, what are you even doing?
Yeah. World champions coming and roll out the dominance. But an amazing looking race and one for, I guess, what do you call that? The latter part is sort of defined as everything after that's the latter part of the season.
Pre or post.
Pre or post Otillo there. But Nargis, this is a post Otillo event. The Manhattan Swimrun FKT with Nargis. Let's swim and run into it.
Yeah. very excited to welcome back to the show for her second appearance, Nargus Harunzadeh. She is a stud swim runner, stud human, and recent as in we're recording this 5 days after she completed a circumnavigation swim run around the island of Manhattan. Never heard of this? Well, it's only a 50K swim around the island, followed by a 50K run around the perimeter of the island. So this was like no joke. You can check out the Strava. But Nargis, welcome to the show. We're stoked to get into this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this and future iterations of it.
Yeah, I like that you're already talking about the future.
Yeah, the future.
But before we get to that, can you tell us, obviously you're half of Team Dark Wave with our good friend of the show, Ben, and you've done tons of swim runs, world championships, you've won races, done all sorts of stuff. Where did the idea for this feat of endurance, because that's really what it is, like where did this germinate?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think with the swim around Manhattan, it's called 20 Bridges. And I had wanted to do it last year. The organization that puts it on is New York Open Water. If you want it to count as a marathon swim that's going to be ratified, you have to do this swim with open water. They're the only ones that have the ratification through the Marathon Association to do it in the New York waterways. And so last year, I had wanted to do this swim run with them, but they're fairly rigid in what they can and cannot do. And it makes sense because they host close to sometimes 80 swimmers from all around the world, and they coordinate these, marathon swims around Manhattan. Sometimes they're night swims, sometimes they're day swims. And so they weren't able to, they didn't have the capacity to allow for this to happen last year. So I did this swim. It was very, very difficult last year. I think when I did it last year, the Hudson, we had winds that were opposing the actual current. And so you had whitecaps the whole way down the Hudson. So suffice to say, my shoulders were destroyed by the end of it. But I go out. I said I would never do it again. And then some time passed and I said, you know what, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to do the run next year. So the genesis of the run is folks have always run around the perimeter of Manhattan. There is one big race that happens every year. It's the Orcas Street Runners 30, because it's supposed to be 30 miles. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. The way they put their race on is they have checkpoints, and the checkpoints change every year. And it's kind of fun. It's whoever can make the shortest route that gets all the checkpoints and finishes first. And for that race, you actually have to stop at every checkpoint and take pictures and then text them to Joe, who's the organizer of Orcas Street Runners. So it's super fun. And so I thought, why not do a swim run that kind of combines these two things? And it's easier, in my opinion, than doing Worlds, because it's not technical. It's just on the streets. There is running in the streets of New York, which is technical in its own way that we can talk about, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you posted the receipts on Strava, which always going to dole out a kudos, although you're obviously in the Low Tide Boy Strava Club, plug for that. But I will note your pace for the 50K run, which was after the swim, was 8-minute miles, 8 minutes and 1 second, technically. So not just, oh, yeah, I did it. It's hustling for sure.
Yeah, I was quite happy with that. I'm a much stronger runner than a swimmer. So, and I know the streets of New York quite well. So I was hoping to maybe do 8:15s. And so I'm very happy with the results. It was quite delirious by the end, but it was really fun.
So we'll certainly get into a race report and sort of hear about the entire journey. But you partnered with Urban Swim and Running for Refugees NYC. So can you tell us a little bit of sort of the charitable component to this and what awareness you were trying to raise?
Yeah, I think, with endurance sports and training for endurance sports, one of the things I've come to really embrace is the ability to do this training is really quite a privilege. And it really helps me with my everyday life. It helps me organize a lot of different things around it. And it's kind of my foundation. And it's a very different mentality than I used to have when I used to be a peak marathon runner, because I was very much a perfectionist back then. It was one thing to focus on. And so I couldn't started to hate training actually. And so when I got into endurance sports, which was really after COVID, honestly, I started really thinking about it more as a privilege. And I don't know if COVID had something to do with it. It probably did. And so when you start kind of thinking about training and being able to participate in these endurance sports as a privilege, it kind of comes along with it that you think about like, how can I give back to communities who are not able to kind of reap these benefits? And so running with refugees is an organization that's based in New York, and they work with yoga and sport for refugees that was born in 2017 in Greece. And so the New York contingent, what they do, they've done maybe, I don't know how many fundraisers they've done to date, but last year they had a track meet where you could sign up and run. And I use exercise as such a large component in my therapy because I think it's a great unifier. It drives mental health symptoms down. It's an antidote for a lot of things. It's a vehicle to self-determination. And so like my ethos in my professional life really matched up with yoga and sport for refugees ethos in their nonprofit and what they do for refugees. And I was like, how cool would it be if I could link this crazy event and really try to fundraise for them? And so I thought about how to kind of verbalize it and what the connection is. And so we were able to do a fundraiser for them. And luckily, running in sports for refugees, running with refugees based in New York has a lot of connections to brands like CLA, Nike, Myler Running, Hoka. So we got a lot of really cool raffle prizes. And the fundraiser is still going on till the end of September. But we were able to raise we're almost at $4,000 right now. So I'm really pumped about that. And it makes me kind of think about what else we can kind of do with this organization that's really doing some really incredible work in Greece.
Love it.
Love it.
We love it.
Obviously, yeah, I saw the raffle prizes. Really cool that those brands were able to support, and congrats on that. I think we'll push to get that over 5K. It's still open for another couple days here, depending on when this is released. But yeah, I mean, you've done Otillo before. You also have a swim background, from what I remember as well. I'm sure kind of a similar question. 50K is a considerable distance for folks to swim, similar to one water race type thing. What I'm sure people are wondering, kind of, how did you adjust your training, if at all, to accommodate such a large volume?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think last year when I did it, so the race of the 50K, last year I trained a total of 150K, which is laughable. And I knew that this year I could not sustain the shoulder pain that I did last year, especially if I wanted to run, because last year, if you would have told me to run afterwards, I don't think I could have, because my shoulders hurt so much. So I tried to, it's really hard in New York to swim. Like, let's just be honest about it. There's like very few pools. They're expensive. You have to like, the way to get there is difficult. So, I took 2 long weekends actually in Lake Placid, where I still worked, but I had access to open water that wasn't like an hour and a half away on subway like Coney Island is. And so I really focused those 2 long weekends on trying to get a lot of swim volume in, and then also running directly afterwards. So that was very, very helpful for my mental framework, and then also for the volume. I really wanted to get more volume this year, but I only rounded out at, I think, 210,000. So not that much, but I'm going to swim in the winter next year. And I'm going to do this again. We're going to get a faster time. And my shoulders were still hurting this year. So hopefully next year they will.
Well, I think faster time is relative when your swim pace was just north of 1 minute per 100, which is pretty speedy. Now before we get into sort of the your race report, we got some DMs about some like just logistical questions, which is kind of funny that I don't know why they didn't DM you, but they DM'd us. They're like, because basically a friend of the show from Team Sparkle Party, OUR, he essentially was like, how is this a thing? What's the permit structure? Can you just go out and do it? So why don't you tell us like how how was this permitted? Like, how did you get permission? Assuming you had a boat and a crew with you the whole time, but like, how would one go about doing this?
Yeah, it's a great question. Focus on the 20 bridges swim, and they also do 40 bridges, actually. Some people do this twice. So there's another group called Urban Swim. And so they do more, kind of bespoke races around the waterways. And they're very fun. They have like swims that go to the Statue of Liberty and back. They have like of itself. And so I approached them and I asked them if they would be willing to do this, and they were so excited and so supportive. And so what they do,
Nice.
they do that myself. It's through this organization. And then the run is a free for all. I mean, like we have a lot of unsanctioned races in New York City. It's the fun of it. It's street running. It's really fun. So that you can just do whatever you want. But in the waterways, yes, you do have to get the Coast Guard permission. And actually, one of the things that we faced this year is after we signed on this date, the UN is in session actually. And so they said they're going to close the waterways all around the UN, which is like most of the East River. And so we were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because we have this habit with the tides. So there's only a specific window where you can do this swim. And so we were like, okay, we'll just go around Roosevelt Island, which is not on the UN waterway, but it adds some time and some miles. But we were like, we got to get it done. But luckily, the UN actually changed the dates last minute. So I got to actually do the regular swim, which I was very excited about because I was nervous. Because one of the things with the swim is Mill Rock, which is like up by 100th Street on the East River. If you don't make the tide change, you'll never finish the swim. It's so fast there that you have to time it correctly, where you can either get, I don't know, shunted by the water into Mill Rock, or you're going to be swimming against the river there, and it's too fast of a current to be able to make it through. So I was nervous if we were going to do Roosevelt Island that I would have to swim much faster. So timing is really, really important in the New York tidal estuary, and it's like above my level. Like there's a scientist that kind of works on it in terms of like taking the tides into account and the moon and all these really cool things. And then you have to really provide a good estimate of your swim speed, which I actually didn't do this year because I was much faster than last year. So I was about 25 minutes ahead of schedule. But then I lost all of that in the Harlem because I had to swim against the Harlem River for an extra 25 minutes. So, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So I'm totally happy with how it went. But these are the things you have to kind of take into account. And it's quite nuanced.
Well, I'll say as a former resident of New York City, Roosevelt Island is a very interesting place. Everybody probably knows someone who lives there and refuses to go to house parties there because it's very hard to get off of that. Well, that's Stout Swim. Most people listening to this, if they aren't familiar with New York City and the waterways, they're thinking of Seinfeld, where
Kramer.
I was going to say Frasier. I was like, oh my God, I'm mixing my metaphors. Where Kramer is swimming in the East River and he gets sick and there's like dead bodies and stuff like that. Can you dispel some of these myths if they're indeed dispellable?
Confirm myths.
It's funny that you say that. We did have a dead body last year in the Harlem River. And so at that time, there was 4 of us. There was one person from England, one from Ireland, one from Australia. And the Australian woman was quite fast. She was very far ahead of all the rest of us. And I don't know if it was her or her kayaker or her boat, but they spotted the dead body and they called out on PD, obviously. So by the time that I got there, luckily I didn't see it. I just saw all that on my PD boats. But yeah, so I can't dispel that myth because it actually happened last year. But as far as swimmability and like visibility in the water, that is quite clearer than you would imagine. And actually there's this one spot where the Harlem River is really the only river that's not fun to swim in. But there's this place in the swim where you go from the Harlem to the Hudson and you can see the difference in color. And it's really cool. And it's also a really nice area that's like at the very tip of New York where there's a lot of greenery that you wouldn't imagine would be there. That's where the big sea for Columbia is, where the rowers practice, I guess. It's my favorite part of the swim, and it's so worth it when you get there. But the funny thing is when you get there, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm almost done because it's the Hudson, but you still have about 3 hours to go at that point. So, yeah.
Wow.
So remind me, where did you start and end the swim?
So usually a lot of the swims started in a battery in the battery at the southernmost point of the island. It's at Pier A. If you want to go for a record, which actually this guy did the day before that I did the swim, you start at Nil Rup. Because that is a naturally faster course because you don't have to go against tides ever. So if you start at the battery, you're against the tide in the beginning, so you have to swim quite fast for the first 500 meters and you're not moving. It's really slow. But I don't know why they started. I think it's just more fun to start at the battery. Also because you get on the boat at North Cove Marina, which is about a half a mile up from the battery at the very tip. So it's just easier to boat you down there than to boat you all the way up the East River to Mill Rock. And so if you're doing a swim run, it makes more sense to start at the bottom because you want to mitigate as much transition time as possible. So it took about, I don't know, 20 minutes to load the boat and then with the kayak and me and then come back up to North Cove Marina. So I think doing it at Mill Rock would have just made the time a lot longer, which is not great for a swim run.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I'm so curious about the nutrition aspect. Obviously you have a little bit of kind of open water fueling or marathon fueling seems to be its whole new thing. I'm sure Precision Fuel and Hydration will delve into that topic at some point. But how do you think about fueling something like that? And then the run, I'm sure you had to be that's a lot of calories, 50 Ks of swimming or 50 Ks of running. Like you have to be eating constantly. It's probably the thing you're focused on most is getting all the calories in nearly.
So last year I didn't really, I had a plan, but I didn't know if it would work. So I talked to a lot of marathon swimmers and it seems like most people fuel up every 30 minutes and they are very diligent about that. And so I did that last year. So last year I got about 350 to 400 calories an hour in the water. I used Spring Energy, which is like a 250 calorie gel. And then I know there's a controversy about them right now.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I was going to say, allegedly 250.
Right now, it worked for me last year. So I was like, I'm going to do it again this year. No, this year actually, and that's a little bit more calories in because the water temperature, and I think all the swim runners listening to this podcast are going to laugh at me, but I'm from New York and I don't really swim in cold water. So the temperature was like 70 to 71. And for me, that's if you're in there for 8 hours, that's cold. It's cold. And so you do calories for thermoregulation. And actually, so last year I did it without a wetsuit. The temperature was like 73 last year, which it's crazy how much of a difference 2 degrees makes. So I didn't get cold at all last year. Also, the air temperature was like 85 because it was a month before. So this year, I had a really big struggle about what do I want to wear because it's obviously better to do it without a wetsuit if you're a swimmer because wetsuits, if you've been swimming all your life, a wetsuit really restricts you. And I really hate wetsuits, even the swim run suits that are so flexible. So I opted actually to go with the Vig Air and
nice.
I got cold.
I
got cold. And I was like, I gotta get more calories in. So I started aiming for 500 calories an hour. And I think that kind of addressed the issue. And I'm really lucky that my stomach is pretty cool with this stuff. I did for the first time, I think last year this didn't happen, but this year, I was feeling a little queasy at some points. I think it's also because I swallowed a little bit more water this year. But I think the caloric intake in a long swim with Swimrun, you're in and out of the water. So that thermoregulation is happening, but it's not a consistent, constant thing that you're in there for 8 hours in this even 70-degree water, right? So I was very aware of that. I took in 500 calories an hour. And then by the time I got into land, in the transition, I made sure that I had somewhere close to 1,000 calories and then of solid foods. And then in the run, I didn't really take in much. Actually, I was very weirdly thirsty for the first 14 miles. And I have a friend who ran a big portion of it with me. And she call her the endurance queen. She's a great ultra runner. She really knows her stuff. She's also a scientist. She's like really smart. And I was like, I'm so thirsty. I don't know what's wrong with me. And she was like, you just swam for 8 hours. Like, it's probably fine. And
What's wrong with you? Not. Yeah.
yeah, so she really, I think it's really all about the mindset. And so she really kind of helped me kind of stop thinking about that, and it kind of went away. But yeah, for the run, I really only took like one gel every 45 minutes. I was so full, like I was fine. And I didn't want to overdo it to get sick. So I don't know, maybe that could have been better, but I didn't feel like I needed it really.
Did you
Well, it must have worked.
Do you change out of the VIG, or do you just run the 50K in the VIG? Just curious.
I changed out of it. I had my ARC. This is like a commercial for ARC. I had the ARC bra on.
That's
It was
half our episodes.
wonderful. So I kept that on, and then I just put shorts on and took the VIG off. And yeah, I could have run in the VIG, but I just took it off. It was easier to run without it. And I had the time. The transition time was a lot longer than I had anticipated. I thought it would be like 20 minutes total, but it took about 20 minutes to get back to land. And then when I was on land, I had kind of like sea legs. So, and I wanted to like really eat well. So I think on the Strava, it showed like 39 minutes, which is a bit long because then your body is, are we done?
Like, we're going home. I don't know what you're doing, but we're checking out.
Yeah. So that's something to think about. But I don't think getting it below 25 to 30 minutes is feasible because of the boat transport. And also you just were in the water for 8 hours. It's a big transition. So
yeah, for sure. And I think still I think taking as much time as you need to make sure that you can kind of have your wits about you, because again, as someone who lived in Manhattan and has done a lot of running in Manhattan, you kind of have to have your head on a swivel. I'm sure when you're on West Side Highway on some of it, it's okay. There's a lot of bike paths, but certainly you have to pay attention. So why don't we talk a little bit about, or tell us a little bit about sort of the running route that you took and sort of direction and kind of what you were thinking and how you plotted it out.
Yeah. So the fun thing about the New York City perimeter is that there's always some places under construction, or there's like a big sinkhole and things are closed off, and it's just a full. So there's actually an FKT about the perimeter, and I think they made their own specific like checkpoints, because that's you really have to do that, because you can't ever run a true perimeter. It's never going to happen. So it's funny. I have a friend who he bikes the perimeter like a lot, so he's very familiar with like the changes and where things are open. And so I wanted to do a recon of the lower tip, because that's where a couple weeks ago that entire area was closed off. So I think I did the the event on Friday, and I believe it was Tuesday, just a couple of days before I went down there to do the recon. And I got the course and I put it on my Strava, and I was like, you want to follow us for the tip. And then the day that we did it, there was, sure enough, a part that was closed off. So we actually had to backtrack this is why I ended up with 32.7 miles, because we had to back limit, and we got into a dead end up at the northern tip. So basically what we did was we started obviously at North Cove Marina. One of the checkpoints that we decided was like a really fair checkpoint to make was the Staten Island Ferry. So I submitted all of this to FKT. So as soon as they approve it, which I don't know why they wouldn't, I ran a continuous clock. So we made some checkpoints for it. So the first one would be the Staten Island Ferry, and then the East River Track, which now you can access, which previously, well, there were some times where that east side was like not continuous until there. And then there is a section that between 50th and 70th, or 50 something and 70, that's kind of open right now, but there has been times where it hasn't been open. So we made the call to just run up First Avenue. And that's because nothing above 70th was open at the time. And then once you go up First, there's like a little bit of a zigzag once you hit 125th to get to 155th, which puts you on the Harlem River Drive, which is such a nice part of New York City that I feel like we don't really ever go to. You can see a really nice view of High Bridge. There's a water tower, but it can get kind of, I wouldn't run it alone at night. Let's just put it that way. But of course I had some bikers with me. And then actually we did get stuck up there because the way that we thought would be onto the path was blocked off. And so we had to go through a park And so guys were on their city bikes. So they had to carry, there was like a 5 flights of stairs. So they had to carry these heavy bikes up the stairs.
Wow.
So I got a little bit more elevation than anticipated. But then once you hit the west side, it's smooth sailing. It's right down the west side highway path. And it's really great. And you just have the Hudson River on your right the whole time. And once you hit the little red lighthouse under the GW, you're basically home, except it's 10 miles. So, but it's faster to run it than to swim it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I
And
love it.
is there a existing FKT for this?
There's an FKT for the perimeter run, and it
Okay.
differs from my run because of the construction. And I think they start at a different place, but as a swim run, you have to start at North Cove Marina because that's where you're dropped off by the boat. So
Okay.
it's just a little bit different.
So this will be the only Swimrun FKT in existence that
Yep.
I'm aware of.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly worthy.
Beautiful.
Chipper and I were talking before we got on air. We
had an
this sort
official
of
meeting.
we had a very ad hoc, but we wanted to announce as an exclusive, we wanted to induct you into the Low Tide Boyz Feats of Endurance Hall of Fame. You are the 3rd inductee, second woman in the thing, and it doesn't come with any accolades or anything, just like our immense just awesome, us being in awe of your achievement, because this was like, it's not just that you did this, right? The week before you did Orcas and won the long course solo female.
Solo.
A couple weeks before, you were at to Love the Swim World Championship, where you actually DNF because you suffered an injury. So
Yeah.
you had like a injury, yet you're still able to do this.
Wow.
I mean, for all those reasons and more, you're very deserving to be our 3rd inductee. And by the way, you can't be nominated for this. This is just Chipper and I. So no nominations are accepted. But yeah, so congratulations on that. But how are you feeling sort of injury wise coming into this? And as a therapist, as someone who's like a coach and helps people on performance, like how did you get sort of your mind right for something this massive?
Yeah, it's really funny. So at World, obviously, you do World with a partner, and I felt so terrible because like actually this was the first year that I had trained. I mean, I trained, but like I actually trained this year. Like I was in really good shape. I like didn't want to let Ben down because he's such a good technical runner. And I was like, we're going to do so well this year. And we were doing very well, actually. And I was tolerating the cold, which is a huge win for me. I was in there, I was doing it. And I'd never seen Ben fall. Never. He is a phenomenal technical runner. He fell like 3 times, like hard. So that's how it was very bad. And I fell like a million times. I can't even count how many times I fell. But really, funnily, actually, like when I think about it, I'm like, I can't believe this happened. So there was I think it was the first run where you actually have time to stretch out and run a good pace. I forget which leg it is. But we were going like a really good pace, and I was ahead of Ben because I'm a little bit of a stronger non-technical runner than he is. And so then we like hit the rocks again. I was like, Ben, we're hitting rocks. It was like after maybe 4 miles of running. I was like, Ben, we're hitting rocks. Go ahead of me. And that's where I fell. So, but I don't know what happened. And sometimes when something really bad happens, you see it in slow motion. I was like seeing it in slow motion, and I don't remember, but Ben was like, you made a really, really loud, terrible sound when you thought.
Oh, no.
And so at that moment, I was like, okay, gotta get up. We're gonna shake it off. And I thought the water is so cold, like it might be helpful actually. So that was around mile 10. We started moving and made it till around mile 17, but it got to the point where I couldn't lift my leg. My leg just went, like there was a tree branch and I couldn't lift my leg to go over the branch. And I was like, I think I'm done. And it was so sad to make that call again, because it's a partner sport. Like you just really, and Ben is honestly probably one of the nicest people I know. And he was so supportive, and I felt so terrible. And it made me feel more terrible. Also, because he's in really good shape right now, too. I mean, he had a phenomenal performance at Rockman. And so I just felt so awful. But we went on we got on the boat and we got to watch the race. We got to watch the pigs swim from the boat, which was fun.
Nice.
And it was a great day and everyone's so nice. But yeah, my back was really painful. The plane ride home was off and I couldn't sit. Like I actually, okay, another commercial for ARC. I used the ARC pillow. I'm like,
As a booster chair.
yeah, as like my pillow.
Wow.
Like, and it was like, cause it kept me upright and then, so yeah, so I got back to New York and I like texted my PT, who's really great. And I was like, I need to see you immediately. Anyway, I was very lucky that I didn't have any like neurological involvement at that point. But we deduced that it was like a facet joint injury, which also happens in like whiplash. And so that's kind of what happened. It was pretty painful. I really couldn't sleep. I still can't sleep on my stomach actually, because it puts you into extension. But
Wow.
a funny story, I'm like very clumsy, you guys. So swimrun is a really hard sport for me when it's technical. So the funny / really sad thing is I was healing. I didn't do any running. I was barely doing any swimming. And then on Tuesday, so Orcas is Sunday, and the Tuesday before I was running home, my regular work commute, nothing crazy, just literally in New York City. And I fell flat on my face on the sidewalk.
Oh,
I'm
no.
like watching a bike and it really put me back. And then I started feeling a little bit of neurological symptoms. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to see how it is on Friday. And that's when I made the call. I said, Ben, we're racing separately at Orcas. I can't afford to ruin your day again.
You can't
But
be
I really
responsible.
should be responsible. But the thing with Orcas is I am obsessed with Orcas Island. That race, that place,
Hard not to be.
Rosario Resort, everything is just magical. And I couldn't imagine missing it. So I was like, listen, I'm just going to go and we'll hope for the best. And if I finish dead last, great, like whatever. It was
The
a
opposite
very,
happened, incidentally. You mentioned it
Yeah.
earlier, but the exact opposite. of
Last
that was-
first. What's the difference?
it was really painful. But I do have to say that it was a very good mental boost. It was like a mental win for me to be like, okay, if I can do this, and I didn't like the next day I woke up and I was in pain, but it wasn't like worse pain than before. I was like, all right, I just have to rest the rest of this week and we're going to try this. I was like, in my mind, I was like, listen, at the end of the day, no matter what, I can finish the swim. And if I can't do the run, whatever. It sucks. It's embarrassing because I put myself out there with this fundraiser. But you know what? People will get it. Like, who cares? And I think that's the mentality about endurance racing and sports. That's like what it's all about. Because again, I think I posted about this. I used to be the person that was like, if you're in sub 250 marathon shape, you can't run. I literally thought, and it's so crazy. The funniest thing, the last time that I ran a marathon was in it was either 2011 or 2012 New York City Marathon. And I ran a 3:10 and I was devastated. I was like embarrassed. And thinking about that now, I'm like, what were you thinking? And so I've done this very big evolution and mental reworking with the framework that I come to sports. And I really honestly believe that like endurance racing and swimrun in particular, because you're diversifying like what you're doing, has really helped my mental health, to be honest with you. And I think in my private practice, I work with a lot of athletes who are former Division I athletes or who are going through an injury. I have a lot of teenagers who are in high school who are going through difficult times with their sports and applying or trying to get recruited. And, you know, in therapy, in Western therapy, I should say, we are kind of discouraged from drawing from our experiences because it kind of like goes against the training. But I really think that working with athletes and having that experience is indispensable. And so I really strive to kind of embody what I preach, or you don't preach to your patients, but it's like what you like are in that dialectical with them. I try to kind of like live that in my life. And yeah, I think endurance sports and swimrun in particular really speaks to that ethos, and I love it. It's so fun. And that's why this Manhattan swimrun is kind of going to be my baby now, and we're going to have future iterations of it. And I think I will link it to kind of yoga and sport for refugees to kind of have a giving back aspect to it, because it's such an amazing privilege and feat to be able to do this. that why not link it to that and try to kind of give back while you're doing this?
Love it. I love it. Yeah, I think one thing that I think about a lot is when I'm doing feats of endurance is, hey, this should all be enhancing your life, right? Not shouldn't feel like a job or shouldn't be like some huge drag. This is a choice. It's a privilege to be able to do this and to be able to express your fitness in whatever way you want. And I think to do it in this way, not only is it like obviously a major feat of endurance, but it's it sets such a great example for what's possible with endurance. And also to have this be one-off, well, hopefully not one-off, just kind of like a ridiculous thing to do, like this bold, audacious thing to put out there and then do it. I mean, it's just kudos, global kudos all around for putting yourself out there. And yeah, I mean, there's a possibility of failure every time you put yourself out there, but that's half the battle is facing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other way to kind of look at it, there's this philosophy on dreams that I love. And so there's a lot of neurological evidence and biological evidence for this. And it views dreams as actually a mechanism by which we so the brain is overfitted, right? So our brains are exposed to the same stimuli every day. So for better or worse, right? Like we're doing the same thing every day. We overfit, we overspecialize, and that's how our neurological like pathways work. And so this philosophy is that like dreams kind of take that and they make your brain more generalizable and they make it more expansive and they put these weird like things in your brain that like you would never think of otherwise. And so you can be opened up to this other world of possibility. And I kind of think about endurance sports like that because you're putting yourself out there. It's not the normal stimuli that you're going against every day. It's not that same like training set of data. It's like all these different variables and feelings and emotions that you didn't even really anticipate would happen. You can get the craziest thoughts and feelings in the long race. And it's really interesting to kind of like sit with that and navigate it and then come out the other end, whether your race itself was successful or not. But I think you're kind of building these neural pathways that help navigate like all these different aspects of life. And that is so cool. I love that.
Yeah. It's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I mean it's so great, and I wouldn't say that I'm inspired to do the Manhattan circumnavigation swim run just yet, but you are inspiring, and there's a certain German who lives in Sweden who I'm sure is already going to be hitting you up to join you next year. Marcus, we see you. But yeah, I guess final question for you is, what's next? What feat of endurance is up next for you?
I don't know. Well, I'm gonna run a marathon, which is like not a feat of endurance, but it's a big like mental block for me. So I think I'm finally like mentally there where I can run a marathon and run whatever pace that it is, and I'll be cool with it. So I'm running Philly. In a couple weeks. But in terms of, I think figuring out how to put on the swim run next year in terms of timing, logistics, and also in terms of like driving down costs and making it more like tenable for folks. And then also maybe doing it myself again and actually trying to do a little bit of a faster time on the swim and having a more informed approach. I think this year was just for completion. We actually floated down the Hudson for a little bit. We were just like having a great time. It was wonderful. But I think maybe doing that and having other people join and like thinking about what's next for yoga and sport for refugees. I'm so like every time that I talk to them, I feel so energized about what they do. And I just want to be able to kind of contribute to that and like link endurance sports and whatever it is that we're doing with them. So yeah, I think thinking about the next iteration of this race, making it a race even, is going to be my next big project, and I'm excited for that.
Awesome. Well, your passion really comes through, and yeah, we'll be obviously cheering you on for that next iteration if you're participating or organizing it, which is probably might even be seemingly more challenging than actually doing it with the logistics. But yeah, Nargis, really appreciate you coming on for a repeat offense here on the podcast. But congrats again on the FKT. Be sure to let us know when you get official word and there's some sort of official document that we can circulate on the Instagram for you. But
Yeah.
congrats.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
For sure.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swim run.
Check out our website, lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z, for swimrun resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Writing Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swim run and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run,
And then a swim,
then another run,
then another swim.
then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because,
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel
Of
too.
course, yes.
In the morning,